Hello everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Today we have some malicious compliance stories and our first story of the day is by SpongeBob No Pants. Security regulations you wrote apply to you too. This was my first security gig right out of the military. Good starter job for security work. It was access control at a medium-sized aircraft engine factory. Friend of mine worked HR there, but he also held the title as head of security. So he offered me a job and I accepted. One of the biggest rules were ID checks. Apparently, a few years prior, a couple of people had gotten in with photocopied IDs. So after that, we had to physically check the ID was plastic. We did this by touching it. Now, do access control enough and you start to memorize people. We didn't check those IDs by touching them because we knew them, and if they had been fired, we would have gotten a notice. Well, that angered the head of HR, so she set some new rules. She wasn't the head of security, but security fell under HR, so she kind of was. All IDs must be checked, no exceptions. No non-employee is allowed through the gate without a notice signed by her or the head of security, and has to be submitted 12 hours prior to their entry, like for people scheduled for interviews. Visitor badges assigned without prior approval can only be done for normal deliveries, like the post office or FedEx. Anyone who violates it will be reported by security to HR for a security violation. That was fine and dandy. We really didn't care. Everything went smooth for about a month until that one day. Here she comes to the gate, but she isn't driving, her husband is. It is raining, and I mean flood level raining. I asked her husband for his ID, and he says he didn't have one. She's seen where this was going and tried to stop me. He was only there to take her in because it was raining, and she didn't want to walk from her car to the building and ruin her outfit. That's when I threw the rules back to her. I didn't have a security notice for him, so I couldn't assign a badge and couldn't let him in. She tried but it's only 100 yards, which again, I reminded her of the rule she set down. She actually said, "Well, I'm your boss." Technically she wasn't. "We are going in anyways." Which I replied again, her rule that any breaches of policy must be reported as a security violation. So there she is, dressed to the nines, forced to walk, without a jacket, to the building. 100 yards in the rain to get to her office. Why didn't we lend her a security rain jacket, you ask? Because she said there wasn't enough money in the security budget to buy them. Later that day, she modified the rules that on drop-offs, that security has full discretion to allow someone entry for that purpose. We also got our rain jackets 2 weeks later and she never bothered security again. So let me ask you guys, do you think the rules that the head of HR put in place were too rigid, or do you think that they actually did make a lot of sense for this place? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. The next story is also by SpongeBob No Pants. Be a jerk, I'll sit in the break room with pay for 6 hours. I just called my dad about this subreddit and he gave me this story. It is his, not mine. He worked in a factory for 33 years. Close to his retirement, he gets a new boss. Now dad says he should have had that guy's position and was offered it, but he turned it down due to it being a non-union position. He just stayed with his union position of group leader. Now this guy was a young college graduate, no experience working in a factory, and took perverse pleasure in his authority. Anyways, one day the line dad is working on goes down, so dad tells the other 4 people on the line to scatter and help some other lines while he helps maintenance get that line back up. While helping maintenance, here comes that boss kid of his. He jumped dad. It is against company policy for group leaders to help maintenance. Also, it is against company policy for the others on the line to work on another line. In other words, you can only work on that line that day. You also couldn't help maintenance repair it. So dad gets the other line workers and they head to the break room. Kid boss comes in wondering what they are doing. It wasn't break time. Well, dad reminded him. The line was down, they weren't allowed to help fix it or work on another line, and that company policy states that if you are not actively working on the floor, you have to be outside or in the break room. So they stay in that break room, watching TV for 6 hours and got paid for it. Next day, the policy was changed that group leaders were no longer allowed to work on a line. They were each in charge of 6 lines, and were to only supervise and do quality control. Also, that anytime a line goes down, the group leader can reassign people on that line to others. But it isn't over. Fast forward a few weeks, they had 2 callouts on one 5-man line. Dad shut the whole line down and reassigned the remaining people for the day. Kid Boss doesn't like this because the line was part of a big order processing and it would hurt his on-time bonus. He told Dad to grab the other 3 and help them on the line. Dad reminded him he was no longer allowed to work on the line, and company policy stated each line can only be missing 1 person and still operate. Dad said in 33 years of sticking to the rules exactly caused no less than 200 policy changes. I don't blame the dad for sticking to the rules. They keep making them and they keep changing them around. The dad's just doing them to the letter. Absolutely zero fault in anything the dad did over the 33 years. All the fault is with the company and the bosses and anybody overseeing policy. Our next story is by Hip-hop-rhino. Do you really want to discuss your grade in front of the class? I was working as a long-term sub back in 07. A student who was never on time and never did any work was having a meeting with her guidance counselor. This school had them in the classroom. Because of these meetings, the kids were working on book work while I was doing grades for said meetings. The student told me to tell the guidance counselor that she was passing and could move on to US History 2 next spring. I told her I didn't want to discuss grades in front of the class, but we could go into the hallway and discuss it there. I had told every student before here the same thing, though in most cases I just wrote their year-to-date grade on a sticky note, which was usually enough. Most students had low B's to high A's. The students were offered a time slot to discuss their grade after school if they wished. Until this student, this was working just fine. She had skipped the part where she was supposed to get her grade slip, was late so didn't get the instructions, and didn't listen when told afterwards. Her classmates reminded her that she needed her sticky note, but she waved them off. The guidance counselor reminded her. She just sat down and the counselor gave a much put upon sigh and started working. A few minutes later, I get a, "Mister, I need you to tell her I'm passing this class." "Well, I have your grade right here. Just pick it up," I replied. "No, just tell me. I want everyone to know how great my grades are here." Apparently, she had been bragging, for some reason, that she was acing my class. Also, apparently her classmates thought it was a hilarious joke, considering several were suppressing laughter by that point. "I don't want to discuss your grades in front of everyone." But she kept insisting, rather than come up and get the slip, a mere 10 feet, 3.048 meters away from where she was working. One of the students shouted out, "Mister, she doesn't care, just tell her." At this point, most of the class and the guidance counselor started to get the biggest grins. The malicious compliance. The counselor added, "If she wants you to inform everyone, then I suggest you inform everyone." Reluctantly, it took another minute or so of my trying to say no, I shared her grade. "Student, your grade is a 2. Not 2.0, but 2%. There is no way you're going to pass this class unless you and I come to an agreement about your schoolwork." "Wait, how did I get a 2? Came the confused reply. "Because you signed your name on all of the tests and quizzes, and because you came to class on time some of the time." "But what does that mean, mister?" With continued confusion, or a really good attempt to play innocent. At this point, one of the other students chimed in, "You got the pity grade." And at that point, the guidance counselor hung up her phone, having, unnoticed, set up a parent-teacher conference in her office for later that week. At that point, the student was sent back to her desk for the next student to come. Aftermath. It ended up being a long meeting. 4 core subject teachers, the counselor, the student, mom, and grandma. She had her meeting and was told by each teacher what she had to do to have a chance of passing their classes with only half the time left. My plan for her was 100% attendance with no tardies, late arrivals without a note, make up all the missing assignments, and then to complete, not get 100s or even passing, just complete everything, and she would pass. Anything over that would improve her grade proportionally. She agreed, and then after 2 days, stopped trying and eventually had to repeat the grade. I'm actually really surprised how cocky the student was that their grade was going to be good. I really think you need to have a certain level of awareness to know how bad you're doing to pull off having a 2% in any class. You literally have to do basically nothing at all to get 2%. And once again, it's SpongeBob No Pants. Quota as are done, let's play card. Another from my father. Like I said, my dad was a group leader and sometimes they had a midnight shift. On those shifts, he was in charge of everything. Every department on that shift. They had a quota to meet. Company policy just said they had to meet that quota, nothing else. So dad would push the workers to finish that quota as fast as they could. After that, they would sit in the break room and play cards the rest of the night because the company policy said that they couldn't leave until the end of their shift. So they couldn't work and they couldn't leave. Company policy also said that when an order was completed, that they needed dad's boss to sign off on another one. So really, there was nothing they could do. This could lead them to be sitting anywhere from 2 to 6 hours on an 8-hour shift. Now dad's boss, who I'll remind you was a college kid, caught onto this and drugged dad in front of the plant manager and company owner. He was going to nail dad to the wall. How dare he waste company time and money? He was stealing because he wasn't working, but dad pointed out everything I listed. So while they didn't agree, there was nothing they could do because he followed company policy. So they tried that once you met your quota, you would no longer be paid but had to stay on site. Union got that thrown out before lunch. So they decided that dad would have a quota and if they finished, a set of duties to perform, like cleanup and getting things set for the morning shift. They just didn't realize that not every part of the factory finished at the same time, so it still ended up with a lot of downtime. Finally, they gave dad the authorization to assign new order starts, so they had a quota, but if they finished early, dad could assign another. If they finished that early, another one. But they only had to finish the first quota, meaning if they were on their third quota at shift end, but hadn't completed it, then they were okay. That ended it. People weren't happy, but hey, policy is policy. The best part? Because of this, dad needed an office. They gave dad his boss's office. His boss got moved off the floor to a converted broom closet in the main part of the building. I love how as the stories go on, it revolves around the college kid trying to just pound the dad into the ground, only to do exactly what the college kid said to do, and it just ends up pounding the college kid even further into the ground. Ended up pounding them into the converted broom closet in the main part of the building too. This next story is by Venti-depresso. Sir, that will set off your alarm. I used to work for a security alarm company in their dispatch office. I would get signals like burglary, fires, silent panic, or maintenance needed notifications and follow our policy on responding. One of the highest priority alarms are silent panic alarms, like you might have at a bank or a jewelry store. In this case, I believe it was a small business jewelry store. The thing about panic alarms is that we have very strict rules on how to respond. If someone calls, verifies their identity, and gives the cancel code, we can't just cancel our immediate police notification. We don't know if someone is holding a gun to their head or otherwise threatening, and unless an account has specific instructions to do so, we never call anyone but the police, not even the account owner, until after the police are done. One day, a man calls in because his alarm system won't arm. He's getting a trouble signal, just a low battery from panic alarm number 2. His system won't arm until that trouble signal is cleared, and we usually suggest people have spare batteries on hand, but it seems he didn't feel that was necessary. I let him know that we can send our on-call person out, or he can try picking up supplies from a battery store, but he just wants to go home. He's getting very frustrated, but there's genuinely nothing I can do from my end to bypass a panic sensor and arm his system like he demands. Eventually he says, "I'll just freaking smash it and go home." I tried to tell him that'll set off the panic alarm. He uses some loud and unkind language and then he hangs up. And then, seconds later, panic number 2 is triggered. Per our policy, I called the police, gave them dispatch information, then sat back and felt very pleased with myself. It continued to feel kinda great even 5 minutes later when he called back infuriated that the police had shown up to his store for a panic alarm. I explained to him that something set off his panic alarm and we must respond to all of those with the same urgency since we never know what's happening on the other side. He wasn't pleased, but eventually we were able to reach our on-call tech to fix the panic button, which not only had a lot of battery, but now physical damage that required it to be replaced. I kind of feel bad a bit for the guy because it just sounds like they're having a crap day and all they wanted to do was just go home and they had this alarm that was giving them issues because they didn't get an extra battery. And the options were either go to the store yourself and get a battery or have somebody get sent out, which God knows how long that would take. But the guy definitely let his temper get the best of him and ended up making the situation a lot worse. And our final story of the day is by MytiTaco. Everyone must get their temperatures taken before entering the building. One of the policies my work has in response to a certain health crisis is that every person entering the building must first have their temperature taken by someone trained in the procedure. No one is here to take temperatures. I'm sure someone will eventually show up. Update: someone came in for temperature checks 2 hours and 45 minutes after the start of my shift. Well, look at the bright side. At least they're taking the precaution of trying to make sure everybody is clean and healthy before going into the building. That's more than you can ask from a lot of places. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So, which of these stories was your favorite and why? Let me know in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing and turn notifications on if you haven't so you'll never miss an upcoming video. Any little thing that you do helps the channel grow so much more. Whether it's commenting, subscribing, or just watching the video, thank you all so very much for supporting me right here on the Storytime channel. I hope you all have a wonderful day and I'll see you all next time right here.